Hi everyone, it's Miss Naima. So welcome to your class key text this term from the chapter book of The Secret Diary of Jane Penny. So let's get reading. And we are on page 42 and it's day 16 on Jane Penny's diary. All the other servants seem to be afraid of Mr. Pritchard, the butler. Well, maybe not afraid, but very careful to keep him happy. He's a very stern-looking man, with a stare that would frighten a bunny back into its burrow or straight into the path of a snare. As you can see, there's a little number 35 there, and let's have a read what a snare means. In the countryside, some poor people would poach on other people's land. In other words, they'd put down illegal traps, such as rabbit snares, to catch wild animals to eat. A snare is a noose of wire or cord. Food could be hard to come by, and without traps, they might have to live off bread and vegetables alone. He looks like he's never smiled in his life. Like if he did smile in face, his face might crack. Um, his hair is as black as boot polish, but his eyebrows are going grey, which makes me wonder if he do put boot black in his hair. When when Mrs. McNamara took me to see Mr. Pritchard in his room, she told me to be on my very best behaviour and not to speak unless I was spoken to. I was marched in and looked down at the corner of an old rug on the floor. Name, he says. Penny, sir, I says. Jane Penny. You will not call me sir, he says. No, sir, I stammers. Then my face glows like a hot coal. You call me Mr. Pritchard. Yes, Mr. Pritchard, I says. And look at me when I'm talking to you, he says. Most butlers like to be called Sir or Mr. Whatever, but it turns out that Mr. Pritchard only likes to be called Mr. Pritchard. Of course, Mr. and Mrs. Kirbytrot don't call him Mr. Pritchard. That's just as servants. They just call him Pritchard. So as you can see, there's a number 36 there, so let's see what that means. Butlers were never called Mr. by their master and mistresses. Okay. I'm firm but fair, Penny, he says. Firm but fair. Give me a reason to give you a telling off, and a telling off you shall have. But work hard and behave properly, and you shall have no complaint from me. Yes, Mr. Pritchard, I says. Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. There's a big map of the world on the wall behind Mr. Pritchard's desk, and 'cause he told me to stop staring at the carpet, I couldn't help but notice it. He caught me glancing past his shoulder at it. You are interested in the Empire? He asked in that stern voice of his, raising one of them greyish eyebrows. Yes, Mr. Pritchard, I says, hoping that it was the right thing to say. I am mighty proud of Her Majesty, and that. Okay, so what is referred to as Her Majesty? Let's have a read. Her Majesty was Queen Victoria, who ruled from 1837 to 1901. She was the longest serving monarch until Queen Elizabeth II, who came to the throne in 1953. So Queen Elizabeth II, as you all know, is our queen now. Everyone's proud of Her Majesty, so I couldn't go wrong there. And so you should be, says Mr. Pritchard. We live in the greatest country in the world, Penny, a world in which our empire reaches all four corners. Just look at the pink. So what does the pink refer to here? Let's have a read. In 1899, when the British Empire was at its largest, it was made up of Great Britain and the colonies, foreign countries ruled by Britain, with a population of over 370 million people. The empire, which covered around one-fifth of the Earth's land surface, was shown in pink on maps at the time. Red was the traditional color of the empire, but writing on maps showed more clearly on pink. Okay. Lots of the countries on his map are colored pink, so I did what I was told, and I looked at the pink and nodded like I knew what he was on about. And we all play our part in making the British Empire great, Penny. You remember that? Me, even you. By doing our jobs and our duty, we are all part of what keeps the wheels of this country and this empire oiled and turning. Yes, Mr. Pritchard, I said. Wheels? Oiled? I was right confused now. Mrs. McNamara wanted me to keep clean, and here Mr. Pritchard was talking about oily wheels. Making me way to the kitchen, I had a think about what he'd said. First off, may not have learned much at school, but I knows that the world is round. So how can it have four corners like Mr. Pritchard says? Then again, maps ain't round, and they're of the world. It's all confusing. And second, it's all very well being part of an empire, and course we're better than the French any day. It don't make my life better, do it? The rich is still rich, and the poor is still poor. There's number 39, so let's see what Jane refers to here. Class mattered in Victorian England. There were the upper class, rich, no need to work, the middle class, men worked as doctors and lawyers, for example, while the women stayed at home. The working class, where men, women, and children all worked, doing the hard, dirty, and dangerous work, and the poor, working when they could, but possibly ending up in the workhouse. Okay. But I'm in a grand house with grand people now, and that's a big step up from Mrs. Berry's. It's so different working in a place like this after working for Mrs. Berry. There are so many of us here for starters, and there are so many rules to follow. Some of them are written on a framed notice on the wall of the servants' hall. The only problem is that plenty of us can't read, and those what can read can't read too well. Yes, there's free schools nowadays, and we all got our educating. Let's just stop there and have a read what that 40 means. Okay. The 1870 Education Act said that children had to go to school aged 5 to 10, but the schools weren't free. Free schools weren't introduced until 1891. That is what free schools mean. Yes, there's free schools nowadays, and we all got our educating. Most of us in my school were taught to the test. What does to the test refer to here? Let's see. Teaching to the test was very common. We read from the same page of the same book, day in and day out, till we knew it like it were the Lord's Prayer. Then, when the inspectors came, the teacher made make a big business out of which book we should read from, and then which page, knowing full well if it weren't that book, and that page would be as sunk as the Princess Alice. And why? Let's just stop there and have a read what that number 42 means. So the Princess Alice was a passenger-carrying paddle steamer which collided with a huge coal-carrying cargo ship in the River Thames in London in 1865. A staggering 650 people died. That's a lot of people that died. And why? Because the more of us what passed the test, the more money the school got. And why waste time teaching the likes of us proper? Anyways, here's a copy of the rules. As you can see, this is a list of the rules that was written in Jane's school that she attended. Never let your voice be heard by the ladies and gentlemen of the house. Oh, this is a list of rules that is written in Lytton House. So that is a list of rules for the workers and servants. So let's read again. Never let your voice be heard by the ladies and gentlemen of the house. Stand still when being spoken to and look at the person speaking to you. Never speak unless spoken to, not even to say good morning nor good night. Servants should never offer any opinion to their employers. Never to talk to another servant in the presence of your master or mistress. Always answer when you have received an order, so it is clear that you have received the order. Always give room, stand aside if you meet one of your employers or one of your betters upon the stairs. Always keep outer doors fastened. Only the butler, Mr. Pritchard, may answer the bell. Every servant must be punctual at meal times in the servants' hall or may miss their meal. No servant is to take any knives or forks or other articles, No remove any provisions, no ale or beer from the servants' hall. No gambling or oaths or abusive language is permitted at any time. Female staff are forbidden from smoking. No servant may receive any visitors, friends, or relatives into the house. No servants' hall is to be cleared and closed at 10:30 at night. Any breakages or damage to the house will be deducted from wages. Any maid found fraternizing with a member of the opposite sex will be dismissed. Okay, as you can see, that was a list of very harsh rules in Lytton House. I had them read to me more than once, so I has no excuse for not knowing them. There are more don'ts than in the Ten Commandments, because there's only 10 of them I counted, but most of them is common sense. Our servants should be invisible and silent and work, 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 and work. Okay, we will continue reading on day 23 and page 53 tomorrow. So that is our reading done for today. Now get a pencil and paper ready for your comprehension questions that the pages that I've just read so far. So if you want, you can always pause the video and go back to the video to look for your answers on the relevant page you need. So number one is, who is Mr. Pritchard in Lytton House? And you will find your answer to this on page 42. And your second question is, what thing does Jane refer to as Princess Alice? And this you will find on page 50. So pause the video and jot down your questions. And if you want, you can go back to the video and rewind the video to look for your answers for these questions. Okay, good luck, and I hope you enjoyed reading together with me. Please make sure you put your answers on tapestry so I can have a read of how well you've done. Thank you for listening. Bye.